Welcome to this meeting of Council. This meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the voices and images of those participating in the meeting may be captured as part of the recording. Indigo Shire Council acknowledges the traditional owners of the land, which now comprises of Indigo Shire Council. We pay respect to their elders past and present, celebrate and respect their continuing culture, and acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. As councillors, we have all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Do we have any apologies or leave of absence? No. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest?
Yes, I have one. For item 11.1, I have a conflict of interest which I've previously disclosed to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsworthy. Do we have any community and council achievements? No. Item 7, condolences. Councillor Horn.
Thank you. I wish to acknowledge the community contribution of Mrs. Mary Williams of Rutherglen, who passed away late last month after a short illness at the age of 92. Mary's early days were spent around the Yarrawonga district before she attended the Presbyterian Ladies College in East Melbourne to complete her schooling. In her younger days, Mary became very well known and highly respected on both sides of the border, earning an enviable reputation for herself as the go-to person for ladies' fashion. After her marriage, she relocated to Bremen and raised a family of 4 who all attended the Rutherglen High School, where Mary was heavily involved in a whole range of school, sporting and community groups and committees. In 2011, she designed and built a home in Rutherglen, where she continued her passion for golf and all sorts of handcrafts. She was well known for the beautiful examples of spun, woven, knitted and crocheted items she made to fundraising efforts and entered in both the Rutherglen and Yarrawonga shows. Shortly before taking ill, Mary was delighted to be amongst a group of residents who successfully lobbied to get a footpath laid in Murray Street, Rutherglen. Known as a quiet achiever, Mary was a valued member of the Uniting Church, Probus and the Rutherglen and Districts Garden Club.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would you like to move a motion that a letter of condolence be sent under seal?
Yes, I would, please. To her daughter, I've supplied the address for the letter.
Moved by Councillor Horn. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Price. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item number 7, the recommendation is that the following minutes be confirmed as true and accurate records. 1, the minutes of the council meetings held on 23 and 30 November 2021, as published on the council's website. And 2, the confidential minutes of the council meeting held on the 30th of November 2021, as supplied to the councillors under separate cover. Someone would like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Do we have any business arising from those minutes? No. Attached to the agenda are questions taken on notice at the council meeting on the 30th of November from Mr. Emerick Teisel. A response was provided by the CEO and another lot of questions put forward by Mr. Jonathan Riley. The CEO has responded to that. Item number 8 is open forum. The responses given by councillors and councillor staff during open forum are the opinion of the individual responders and accurate at the time of response to the best of their knowledge. We have questions from Debbie Tully. Are you present, Debbie? Would you like to stand forward to the rostrum?
My first question is, given that a key target of the Indigo Shire Council's Ageing Well strategy is to promote health and wellbeing, how can the council support the Beechworth Golf Club in continuing to increase its membership of women by ensuring that the golf course is a safe environment for beginners to play golf?
Okay, CEO.
Thank you, Debbie, for the question. So I suppose more broadly, council, not only with the Ageing Well strategy, but with its active Indigo strategy as well, has a whole range of different ways that it tries to encourage participation for women and for all people, young people, older people, men, teenagers, etc. I suppose in relation to the question that you're asking, which is subject to an agenda later on, it's recommended that council will be working with all parties associated with the golf course and Barmouth Park to try and establish dialogue and actions that will go some way towards coexistence and an opportunity for the activities to be undertaken as safely as possible.
Your next question, Debbie.
So I don't have a
Response, no.
no. Okay. Right. What's the value of having a meeting with the Mayor, the CEO, and the Director of Community and Economic Development if the subsequent recommendations bear little resemblance to those that were discussed?
Okay, CEO, and I'd just like to say at that time I was not the Mayor.
Thanks for that. So there were a lot of issues raised in that meeting, and I then had another meeting with the dog walkers as well. So within this motion, which has just disappeared off my screen, is the proposal that those groups get together to discuss the ways to implement some of the suggestions that did come out of that. So there's every intention to have those various ideas that came up to be discussed and hopefully people coming up with some solutions that we didn't name them in here because this is more of a general, it didn't go into the detail within the motion and there was no intention to do that. So all of those suggestions were reported back, but this isn't a minute, these aren't minutes of that meeting. So just to reassure that group that all of the suggestions that were discussed, the proposal is that they are then taken forward to meet with the other groups that might be involved to see how they can be enacted.
And that probably leads on to my last question.
To question 3.
So if the council does not address any of the concerns raised by the Beechworth Golf Club, in our view, how can it, and this is a quote from recommendation 8 in the 8 recommendations, how can the council close the loop on council's engagement on this issue, which I feel results in a breach of your community engagement policy?
CEO.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Just preface it by saying what we have here is the officer's recommendations. So what council laws decide to do later on will be, maybe that may be something else entirely. But the comment about closing the loop was basically saying that there was a consultation process, particularly in regards to Wallace Park as a possible location for an off-leash dog walking area. And what this talks about is to say that any recommendations that come out of today's meeting will then be put on the website, and it closes the loop by reporting back to the community to say, when we consulted on Wallace Park, this was the outcome. So it closes the loop by saying there was a process, we're reporting back to council today and what the feedback was. Council also make a decision tonight, one way or the other. And then whatever is resolved tonight will be put on the website, and therefore that closes the loop. The community can then see what was the result of that consultation process. It may or may not be what you hope the recommendation is tonight, or the resolution tonight, but at least it comes back to the community and describes to them what happened with the feedback that they provided to us.
Thank you, Debbie. Andrew Croom.
If combining the use of a town's only golf course with an off-leash dog walking area is such a safe, simple and low-cost solution for the provision of off-leash dog walking in a community, why is it that the Indigo Shire Council appears to be the only council in Australia, if not the world, to reach this conclusion?
See ya.
Thanks for the question, Andrew. I feel like that's a question without an answer, to be honest with you. I mean, the council hasn't decided tonight yet what it's going to do on this item. Will be discussed later. We certainly recognise as officers that going through the whole process, this has been quite a difficult one to work through. So recognise that there is some difficulties in the combining of the uses of the course, and those are all raised in the report and worked through. And recognising that it's unusual for a golf course to be shared with an off-leash dog walking area. So I guess we all recognise that. Why is it the only one in Australia or the world? I can't answer that question. I don't know why it's the only one. I guess it's, I don't even know if that statement's true or not, but I don't doubt it. And I can't tell you why that is, but all I can say is that this council some 2 decades ago decided to make it as a shared space, and it's still there at the moment.
The second question.
I guess my next question sort of follows on from that answer in a way. Should the Indigo Shire Council adopt the recommendation to endorse the continuation of off-leash dog walking at the Beechworth Golf Course against the advice of both the current Beechworth Golf Club Committee as well as the original 1999-2000 committee that had it imposed on them by a last-minute amendment by Councillors Graham and Councillor Banks in December 1999, will the ISC undertake to indemnify the Beechworth Golf Club Committee and its members against any litigation arising from incidents occurring on the golf course as a result of this recommendation?
See ya.
So as you've noted in the question, Andrew, the recommendation tonight doesn't argue for the creation of off-leash walking at Bumutha Park. It recognises that it's been happening for the last 20 years. So the officers' report talks about trying to find ways for the groups to coexist, and it has suggestions there how that might be. So the recommendation tonight doesn't create any new or added liability for any party other than to continue what's currently been in place for 20 years. So the report doesn't go into any changes in liabilities, and therefore doesn't talk about indemnifying one way or the other. My assumption, and again, this is just thinking on the run, is that the current insurance obligation, the current insurance arrangements that are in place presumably have been for the last 20 years, and that there'll be no change to those, so that council has its own third-party public liability insurance, and the golf club has its own public liability insurance. So I don't see any change to those arrangements arising from any decision tonight. This is really a continuation of what already exists, but tries to find a way through to say, can we help the groups to coexist on the site? I'll leave that there.
Question 3. Do councillors feel that they have been fully briefed by council officers regarding the position of the Beechworth Golf Club Committee about the continued use of the golf course as an off-leash dog walking area, given that the agenda and attachments seem only to include information gained from the council survey and a petition from dog walkers? No examples of the approximately 150 incident reports or the letter to council supplied by the golf club seem to be presented.
Just from a staff point of view, obviously I know the question is aimed at councillors, but just to assure you, Andy, that over the course of the weeks, months, and even the last several years, There's been a lot of contact between officers and the golf club and through Mark Florence and others. And I've also attended a number of meetings, a few meetings over the years. There's been a continuous feedback loop to councillors, so they will have heard on many occasions all the issues that I believe of concern to you. You've written directly to council, you've written directly to councillors, and they've seen that correspondence being passed on directly to them. And so what happens in the background, apart from what you see in the report here, is also reporting back constantly to councils. We have briefings each week, and so we'll talk about issues. So they have been informed by council or by staff of a range of issues. I guess Debbie's questions before about meeting the CEOs, mayors and staff at the time, that was fed back. So councillors, from a staff point of view, we've shared with them everything we know and everything we can. So whether councillors feel like they've been fully briefed is not a question I can answer, but I can say that they've been provided with them everything that we have.
And I would just like to add that councillors will debate this issue at item 11.2. So we won't answer the questions, but we'll certainly debate it when the issue comes up. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you for hearing.
Mr. Rod Shaw.
Question 1. If the ISC decide to continue the use of the Beechworth Golf Course for off-leash dog walking on the leased and owned land of the BGC, will council enforce their local laws associated with off-leash dog walking at peak dog walking periods, which is after work hours and weekends?
So the report does talk about increasing the presence of compliance officers, and we will seek to do that at different times. So I don't want to flag what times they may or may not be. Certainly our compliance officers cover, there's a few, we don't have many and they cover a big shire. So we certainly need to use them sparingly. Yeah. And they'll do things on a sample basis. They can't be everywhere at every time, and we don't propose that they're going to stand behind every tree and jump out just when you need them. But we're certainly looking as part of this recommendation to increase the education program. That includes increased presence of compliance officers.
Question 2. Should the ISC continue to mandate off-leash dog walking use of BGC leased and owned land, the BGC asked the ISC what compensation do they plan for BGC maintenance, fence maintenance to an appropriate standard, and permanent notification at all entrances to inform the public that the land is leased and owned by the BGC and maintained to a high standard by the BGC, and appreciates that all users leave the course how they found it.
Yeah, I guess, again, this report sees the continuation of existing arrangements that have been in place for a couple of decades. It doesn't propose any change in compensation. It doesn't propose any additional fencing to be done, but it does talk about trying to increase compliance, education programs, and trying to deal with issues that way. It doesn't propose the things that you've outlined in there specifically.
Question 3. Is the ISC aware a police prosecution was instigated recently as a result of an assault by a dog walker on a golf club member? That member continues to be both traumatised and intimidated by the event and the ongoing issues of off-leash dog walking on the BGC.
So, Rod, I believe you emailed us, it was within days, I think, of our meeting with you, and you emailed that incident to us. And speaking for myself, but I know others were shocked and appalled by that event. And we were aware that, I don't know about the police prosecution, we're certainly aware of the incident as you shared with us, and presume that that was passed on to the police. So I guess we all assumed that was the case. And in no way, shape or form, with this council condone or accept or in any way believe that that was acceptable behaviour. So we're aware of it and we're all shocked and appalled by it.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending and asking those questions. Item number 9 is petitions. Any petitions? No. Item 10, the recommendation is the council accepts the November 2021 finance report.
Excuse me. Given the questions that have been asked by the audience, I'd like to move a motion as per section 33 of our governance rules that we consider agenda item 11.2 now, so that, I'll speak to the motion. I'll move that motion that we consider item 11.2.
All right, do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Is anybody against the motion? No. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yep. So given that motion's passed, we consider 11.2. I'd like to move a motion in relation to 11.2 that reads, as per the recommendation from items 1 to 2 and from 4 to 8. Item number 3 that talks to the retention of the declared off-leash area. I would like to change that to read, makes an order under section 26(2) of the Domestic Animals Act 1994 to remove Barmutha Park from the list of leash-free areas.
Items 1 to 2 and items 4 to 8 remain the same. That item 3 changed to read, makes an order under section 26(2) of the Domestic Animals Act 1994 to remove Barmutha Park from the list of leash-free areas.
Do you wish to speak to the motion,
I
Councillor?
need a seconder.
Oh, do we have a seconder? Yeah, I thought Jenny seconded it to be moved
no.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's right. I was just trying to say that. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Well, I can't second it. It's so it's lapsed.
No worries.
Do we have any other motions in regard to 11.2, or do we want to place back in the agenda?
We've moved it so that it needs to be
It can
considered.
be, yeah. All right. Does anybody else wish to move a motion? Councillor Shepherd.
Just in relation to the question that was asked, I agree. I think question number 8 could be changed to the final recommendations adopted by council along with the consultation report will be placed on council's website. I don't see why we need to say we've closed the loop on council engagement on this issue, because I think it's ongoing. It's obvious in this motion that there's going to be ongoing engagement.
So you're moving that as an amendment to the motion?
Yeah.
Do we have a seconder?
There's no motion on the table to be amended. There is no motion. There is motion, but it has lapsed, so there is no motion on the table. So
I'll move this motion with that amendment.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Price. Councillor Shepherd.
Around that amendment, I just, in terms of the question that was asked, I agree that it doesn't need to be a closed loop. I'm not sure why that's there. In terms of the whole motion, I think I understand.
This is the motion.
Yep. I understand that the concerns of the golf club, and I have sympathy with them, but we also have, on the other hand, the ongoing usage of that space for 20 years by off-leash walkers. I understand there's been a rub between those two, and I'm hoping that with this motion that we're setting up, that there'll be an opportunity for both those groups to engage and discuss with our officers involved a collaborative use of that space. And I think this is an outcome that we need to try first, because we haven't yet done this. we've just got two opposing opinions on what has been a shared space now for, as I said, 20 years. I really think we need to give it the opportunity for some collaborative work to happen here and us to talk about how we can use that space. I understand that on both sides there's been concerns, and there's been a group set up that are absolutely confident that they're going to be able to work within your with your concerns in mind. I'm interested in exploring that.
You reserve your right, councillor, as a seconder. Right, councillor. No, does anyone else want to speak to the motion?
Yes,
Councillor O'Connor.
Firstly, I want to say that the concerns of the Beechworth Golf Club are absolutely legitimate, and there's nothing in this motion that suggests they're not. As I said, I've met with both parties and there is goodwill on both sides. It hasn't had an opportunity yet to be explored further. I'm pretty committed to the idea that if in 12 months or so, it's obvious that this coexistence hasn't worked because the dog walkers are not respecting the fact that it is a golf course and that there are various conditions. And I think there are things that will come out of those discussions, such as much better signage that you've talked about. We've talked about, ideas like having more dog bags and bins so that, there's much more opportunity for people to make sure they clean up after their dogs. That there be a very clear, no parking on grass is another one that I think might alleviate some of the issues. So there are things that could be done that I think really would help to improve. The people that are the dog walkers I've spoken with are all very much willing to do those things, including looking at times and changes around access times and things like that. So I'm hopeful. If, however, at the end of this time, when reasonable people have tried to come up with things, if people don't abide by that and we see bad behaviour and a risk to golfers and dogs that are not being properly managed, I would absolutely revisit this with a view to saying I do no longer support dog walking in that area. So this is for me, this is a give it one red hot go. Council will support and put resources into that. I'm hopeful, I won't say I'm confident, I'm hopeful that the representatives will come together. I don't have any issue, actually. I think you will all come up with reasonable outcomes. My concern is that the people who are not necessarily on those community panels or groups don't abide by those agreements, and that's something that you've raised as well with enforcement. We've talked about that here. But in the end, I think there is a community approach that says bad behaviour will not be tolerated, even within your own networks. That's really important. So that's my hope. It is a really beautiful area. I understand why people want to be able to walk and see that area. Wallace Park doesn't come anywhere close to meeting those needs for people. All of that's true. However, it is a golf course and we need to make that a very, very clear understanding for people that are using it. So that's my hope, and I hope we don't have it back here in a year or so to have to change that decision.
Councillor Goldsworthy.
So I do have significant concerns about this continuing to be an off-leash area. 150 incidents is more than just a bit of a rub. One of which we were led to believe that it recently reported to police. So the problem that we have and the proposal that's been made is that it predominantly, the basis behind it is that the golf club only has set events and that the golf won't be played at other times. And so you'll have dog walkers out there potentially when you've got a recreational golfer just going on during the day and having a hit. The better solution would be to have dogs potentially, if you want to do a trial on leash, still use the outside of the golf course as somewhere to walk if they really need it. But you could certainly, you don't need your dog off leash, because we know that when that happens, they're not under effective control as per the requirements of state legislation. They do go and steal golf balls. They do go and defecate all over the place, and they have attacked people. And it leads to conflict. So I think this motion has some aspects to it which I support, but the one where it's continues to be an off-leash area is not appropriate for a golf course. And as has been spoken about, it would be a very rare case indeed where you have people doing recreational activities with their dog walking in front of golfers. It's a risk that we shouldn't be accepting as a council.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Before I go to the seconder, I've just got a question for the CEO, and it's similar to one that was asked during open forum on page 54. The second last paragraph, an assessment was undertaken to identify a similar situation across the state relating to a golf course on Crown land combined with an off-leash dog area. There were no cases identified replicating the situation in Indigo Shire. I'm just wondering why it hasn't been replicating, because off-leash areas are in demand in most areas around the state. And I'm just wondering that nobody else does it because of the high risk involved. And it talks about on that same page about the risk perception may be influenced by personal experience. And for this reason, Council has used an internal structured framework to consider the risks considered in a considered and objective manner. I just wonder whether inviting a family to go onto an off-leash area, which is also a golf course, puts the community and council at some risk.
Look, I think the simple answer is yes, it does. And there was a risk assessment done. And the obvious answer is that while you're near a golf course, there is a risk. The risk assessment was done, but that takes into account consequences and probabilities and things like that. What's the probability of someone actually being hit and someone being injured, that sort of stuff. And so the assessment, it wasn't assessed as a high risk, but it's certainly a risk. Like the comment there about the assessment undertaken similar situations, and it probably goes to Andrew's point before. There's not a lot of examples where we do find combined golf courses and off-leash dog areas. There's no doubt about that. So I agree with you on both fronts. There's not many examples of it, and there is a risk. And this acknowledges that there is a residual risk, and it can be somewhat. Suggestion is it can be somewhat managed by trying to get people to agree to behave in certain ways, and if they can follow certain basic guidelines about staying away from people teeing off and things like that, then that risk can be lowered. But no doubt, there still remains a residual risk. There's no doubt about that.
So, Councillor Price.
Firstly, I'd like to say to the community that I think we have heard quite a bit on this issue. We've been well briefed by staff over a number of months with this issue being brought up what felt like every second week as different incidents were reported or different meetings were conducted. I think there is goodwill on both sides, and I understand that there have been a number of issues for the golf club and that we have been working with them for some years. I think this recommendation draws a line in the sand. We're putting some resources in to try and have some behaviour change. We're putting some resources in to try and get some communication going between these groups. And I agree with Councillor O'Connor. I'd like to give all of that a go before we change something that has been in place for 20 years. But we're paying attention, we're involved, and we're keen to hear how it goes and to be a part of that. So I'm interested to hear.
So, Councillor Shepherd, do you wish to sum up?
So the dog walkers have been put on notice with this motion. On leash is the alternative to this motion if the two groups are unable to share this space without incident. And the dog walkers have an historic right, and we should give them the opportunity to modify their behaviour.
I now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Those in favour, if you could raise your hand again. Councillor Shepherd, Councillor Croucher, Councillor Horn, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Price. And against, Councillor Goldsworthy and Gaffney. I'm sure that's not a first either. Item 10.1, the recommendation is the council accepts the November 2021 financial report. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Croucher, seconded by Councillor Price. If you're seeing that your questions are over, if you'd like to leave, that's fine. You're all welcome to stay if you'd. So item 10.1 has been moved by Councillor Croucher, seconded by Councillor. Moved by Councillor Croucher, seconded by Councillor Price. Councillor Croucher.
Yes, the financial position is still favourable to forecast despite the variances as seen in individual account lines and services areas. So that's why I moved that.
Councillor Price. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Croucher?
No, I don't.
Now put the motion. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 10.2, rate cap variation. The recommendation is the council does not seek a rate cap variation for the 2022-2023 financial year. Moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Price. Councillor Goldsworthy.
There's no strategic justification for a rate cap variation at this point.
Councillor Price.
Yeah, I'd agree and say that there's an enormous amount of work that would have to go into us making such an application, and we're not seeking to do so.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Goldsworthy? No. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 10.3, planning permit application. The recommendation is that the attached draft development plan be endorsed as an approved development plan for the purposes of section 43.04 of the Indigo Planning Scheme, subject to the following amendments and notes being included on the plan. 1, amendments. 1, provision of building envelopes on each lot, which provides for separation from boundaries and protection of significant trees. All buildings and associated development must be contained within the nominated building envelopes. Note 2, this plan is conceptual and may be subject to minor change following further detailed design in relation to stormwater treatment. Any subsequent plan of subdivision must be generally in accordance with the approved development plan. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor.
I'd like to move an alternate motion if I could. So that the attached draft development plan for 24 Elmo Road, Beechworth, be endorsed as an improved development plan for the purposes of section 4304.04 of the Indigo Planning Scheme, subject to the following amendments and notes being included on the plan. Number 1, lots 5, 6 and 7 be consolidated to provide for 2 allotments. Number 2, provision of building envelopes on each lot which provides for separation from boundaries and protection of significant trees. All buildings and associated development must be contained within the nominated building envelopes. Notes that number 1, this plan is conceptual and may be subject to minor change following further detailed design in relation to stormwater treatment. Any subsequent plan of subdivision must be generally in accordance with the approved development plan.
Would somebody like to second that? Seconded by Councillor Price.
So this is something we deferred from the last council meeting, and I've sort of looked further into, I needed more information, and I think other councillors did as well, as to this development plan. We did a site visit. We noted that the back right corner of the property had significant trees, and by putting those 3 allotments together and dividing them in 2, I think there'll be more opportunity to have a building envelope where more of the trees are retained, and it's an important feature of that block. And significantly, this plan really is going to be one of our first ones done under our sustainability development plan, with a sustainability development template. So I think it's important that we try and maintain some of the trees on that block.
Councillor Price. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher.
Yeah, I think Councillor Shepherd said the site visit we went to indicated to me that alternative motion that you've made tonight would be a good one and be very beneficial as such.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
Yes, I think that this type of development will be ongoing. So it's very important that we get this one right. And I think the amendment enhances that situation. And by working with the landowner, I think it's a good outcome.
I've just got a question for the mover. The building envelope for that block, does that go where the trees are?
The 3 blocks will be combined and then divided into 2. So there's an opportunity to make, I think, the 2 building envelopes away from the trees and still be able to have solar and I imagine they'll have to remove, it's quite a thick little area down the back there. But when we looked at it, by having 3 blocks in that area, it's going to, speaking to the planners, I couldn't see that, and they couldn't respond to me as to how they were going to build there. So, so yes, there'll be more opportunity for building blocks, for building on those 2 blocks rather than the 3.
And no one else wants to speak to the motion? Do you wish to sum up? Oh, Councillor Price.
I'm really satisfied that this is a good motion. Although this is in general residential zone, it's important that we recognise the location, that it's near farming land, it's near a golf course, and we can achieve sort of a blending by making changes such as this to make it more appropriate for that site. A site visit allowed us to see all of this and to work that out, and I think this is a really good motion and a really good outcome for Beechworth.
Sorry, Councillor Shepherd, do you wish to sum up? All right, I now put the motion. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 10.4, the recommendation is that Council adopts the attached procurement policy 2021. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Shepherd, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Shepherd.
This has already come to us. It's been out for community consultation, and I'd like to thank the 2 people that gave us feedback. Both of them spoke about sustainability, that they felt that perhaps wasn't weighted enough. I've looked further afield after that discussion, after their emails or their submissions, and 10% is at the moment is what other councils are doing. I think, but I agree with them. There is room for us to look at this more closely, especially with our emissions reduction plan. We've got more things that we need to start talking about in this space.
So, Councillor O'Connor, would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 10.5, the Domestic Animal Management Plan 2021 to 2025. The recommendation is that Council notes the community feedback received in support of a cat curfew and requests that further engagement take place in 2022 in relation to the introduction of a cat curfew. 2, that council, following this consultation, a report be brought to council regarding the cat curfew, options available to council. 3, the council adopts the attached domestic animal management plan 2021 to 2025. And 4, directs the CEO to provide increased information and education to the community regarding the management of domestic animals in Indigo Shire. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Croucher, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Croucher.
This domestic animal management plan has been through the process of a draft plan. It's been to community consultation. It's received feedback, and then there's been certain changes where necessary until today when we are ready for its adoption. I note the need for action on cat curfew to be considered in 2022.
Councillor Shepherd.
No, I agree. It's certainly an issue that we got a lot of feedback from about the cat curfew, and it does need to come to council discussion. I also note that we did have on our webpage, when people looked up about cat management, it just said there is no cat curfew. So I'm pretty happy about that last point where the CEO is also going to do a bit of education about what we can already be doing about cats under the Act. Under which Act was it? Domestic Animal Act, of course. Yeah, that's it.
Would anybody else like to speak to this? Councillor Price.
To echo the comments of other councillors, but also just to note that the Environment Advisory Committee has been raising this as an issue for a number of years. The cat curfew, that is. So I'm pleased to see that there'll be further engagement in 2022.
Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Croucher.
No, I think I've said what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 11.1.
Mayor, this is where I'll declare a conflict of interest under Section 128 of the Local Government Act. I have a material conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsworthy. The recommendation is that council adopts the Beechworth Historic Precinct Master Plan Phase 2 experience and acknowledges the requirement for council officers to work with the current tenants of the Gold Office and Maternal Child Health Building to assist the tenants to identify potential new premises for the continuation of their existing and valued activities, and that existing tenancy arrangements will not be terminated without reference to existing lease agreements, the Maternal Child Health Building, or without a minimum of 12 months notice of termination regarding the Gold Office. Would somebody like to move that? Moved by Councillor Shepherd, seconder. Councillor Croucher, Councillor Shepherd.
So I'm the councillor on the steering committee for this, and I'd just like to thank the steering committee and the consultants for the great work that they've done here. And this report, I think, reflects the fact that all of the consideration was given to all the submissions that came in around favourable and some unfavourable around this plan. And they have looked at each question and given, I think, very reasonable response in this report. So I'd just like to thank them. Often it's our officers that have to sort of scrabble to find those, but they've gone into the report and given us some good feedback. So if people have concerns, I recommend them to read what the consultants have said. But the key issues that were raised, of course, were the demolition of the Child and Maternal Health Building. And funnily, when that was raised, when we were discussing it on the steering committee many months back, I did say, do we have to pull that down? Like, why does that have to go? It's why would you pull down something that's useful and people are using? And it was explained to me that it's certainly not part of that historic heritage outlook of that we're doing on a precinct plan. That's why we're doing the plan we're now applying for that area to be of national significance. So that 1960s building stuck in the corner there just does not fit. And I'm pleased to see that we're going to be working with the people that are there at the moment to find them somewhere else. I have sympathy for them. And for a while there, I did sort of agree, but I've been convinced that no, it doesn't fit in this plan at all. So that it does have to go, sadly. The other concern was the forestry display from the Gold Warden's office. And of course, there were 3 submissions. And of course, that's a really important display, but again, is not part of that era. And I think there's an opportunity where that forestry display needs to be put somewhere else for us to have access to. So again, it's not unimportant. It's just in the wrong space.
Councillor Croucher.
Yes, I'd just like to acknowledge everything that Councillor Shepherd has said, and I also make comment also like Councillor Shepherd, their wonderful feedback from a number of sources, and might add excellent addressing of those concerns. It was really good to read the concerns that were addressed really, really well from all the people. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
The issues of catering for the First Nation people and also the Chinese interest, I thought were very well addressed in this report. I would make the comment that I found it quite interesting when considering the removal of the child and maternal health building and the fact that it didn't fit in with the other architecture. The fact that it wasn't that long ago before the council was considering putting quite a snazzy modern building for the council chambers. So I found that a little bit inconsistent. But overall, I think that, a lot of the issues have been addressed in this report.
So, Councillor O'Connor.
I just want to agree with my fellow councillors, and just to reiterate what Councillor Shepherd said, there's currently is a proposal before the National Trust for rating for that area, and therefore anything that doesn't fit in with the original buildings and gardens will take away from the potential for that to be named as a National Trust site of significance. And that's actually very important for the preservation of that area into the future. It also is, as we know, people who are very interested in heritage will travel to areas to see preserved and conserved areas of significance. And my understanding is that this is unique within not just Australia, but possibly anywhere in terms of the significance of this particular part of Beechworth in terms of our colonial history. So as much as I really understand why those groups that use those buildings are disappointed in this, we have made a commitment to help them find other places to be. And I think overriding that is that this is a place of such significance that we have a responsibility as current councillors and as a community to preserve this into the future. So I do support the master plan. Thanks.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I'd just like to make a comment before I ask you to sum up, Councillor, about the importance of our history and our heritage. It all makes up what our culture is, and it's a very important issue, and that's a very good report. Councillor Shepherd, to sum up.
No, just it's great to have it finalised, really, if we vote for it. I think it's been a good process, and I think even people that have been involved as stakeholders and were a little concerned, I know some people have spoken to me about the concern around it. I think they're all at least happy with the engagement and the opportunity to have input. So I look forward to this being there ready for us to start doing some work on when we get some funding, of course.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 11.3, which is slightly amended to the item in the agenda, which will be explained by the CEO. The recommendation is the council endorses the following projects for submission under the Sport and Recreation Victoria Local Sports Infrastructure Fund 2021-2022. Chiltern Tennis Courts, Barnawathan Netball and Tennis Courts, Yakandanda Golf Club Facility Upgrade, Rutherglen Skate Park, multi-site master planning, including Colston Park, Allens Flat Reserve, Barclay Park and Yakandanda Sports Park. And 2, allocates up to $644,174 from the 2022-2023 Capital Works budget towards the following project applications, contingent upon grant success. Chiltern Tennis Courts, $123,300. Barnawathan Netball and Tennis Courts, $240,900. Yakandanda Golf Club Facility, $149,800. The Rutherglen Skate Park, $100,000. And Master Planning, $40,000. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Price. We have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Horn. Councillor Price.
I'd just like to say it's really pleasing to be in a position where we have this many applications that we're able to put forward. And that's due to a number of things. It's the community working with our council staff, it's our active Indigo strategy. And I just think it's really pleasing to see that we have this as many applications as we can to put forward for significant pieces of infrastructure for the future of our communities.
Councillor Horn.
Yes, I think it's wonderful that we have such a blend of projects across the Shire, and yeah, we're very fortunate to be in this position.
Councillor Shepherd.
I'm really pleased to see the Allens Flat master plan on the list. It's been something we've needed to do for a long time. It's a great resource at Allens Flat where it needs definitely needs some master planning. So it's great to see. And also, can you remember a young boy came to speak to us about the Rutherglen Skate Park? Was that about 4 years ago? Was it? And he was passionate and he did just a great job. Do you remember his name? Anyway, I hope someone will tell him because it'd be fantastic if he's still involved. I think he'd still be the right age. He did a great pitch on why we needed to spend money on the Rutherglen Skate Park.
Would anybody else like to? Councillor Croucher?
Yeah, I'm particularly pleased to see the Yakandanda Golf Club facility on there because I was on council about 8 or 10 years ago and they were really looking to update their facility and they've been really striving hard for that. So good on you, Yakandanda. And also the master planning bits. I think that's very important for all of those, Colston Park, Allens Flat, all of those, to look towards the future, to start planning on what's going to happen at their particular venues. So that's really great. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? CEO.
Mr. Mayor, sorry to just alert, just a slight change needs to be made to the recommendation. Councillors will note there was an adjustment made for the inclusion of Barclay Park in the resolution, which wasn't in the agenda papers that went on the website. So we've added Barclay Park and we've added $10,000 extra for that inclusion. However, what we failed to do was to change a number on here which says allocates up to 644. That should actually read allocates up to 654,174. So if the move and the seconder is okay with that change, if I could ask that we allocate up to 654,174 from the Capital Works budget.
So Councillor Price and Councillor Horn, are you happy with that amendment? Yes. So Councillor Price to sum up.
I found his name. Jared Bowering in 2018. So I hope he's still riding a skateboard or a bike. And the only other thing to say, we've had great success with these grant funds before. So I just hope we have similar success going forward.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 11.4, the Kiowa River Community Site Master Plan. The recommendation is the council adopts the Kiowa River Community Site Master Plan and places the document on council's website. 2, the council works with the Kiowa Tangambalanga community to identify and progress funding options to support the implementation of the master plan. And 3, the council continues to work with community and state government agencies to progress minor infrastructure improvements to achieve some access to the Kiowa River for community members in the coming months. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Croucher. Seconder, Councillor Price. Councillor Croucher.
Yes, the Kiowa Tangambalanga community have been looking for access to the Kiowa River to swim, fish, walk, and simply bask by the stream and read a good book. To have a river run through a town and not be able to access has been a bone of contention for many years. At long last, council has been able to purchase a parcel of land from NICMA with the intention of developing the site for community use. Working party of 12 made up of community members have assisted landscape architects, and here we are today supporting the recommendation to adopt the plan and hopefully see Kiowa Tangam community members able to gain access to the Kiowa River this summer.
Councillor Price.
We're all feeding off Councillor Croucher's excitement, but it's great to see it progressing through to the next phase. And if we can get anything like what's here in the master plan, then I think it'll be a great asset for the community. So well done to all those for getting it through to this stage.
Would someone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher, to sum up.
I think I've said enough.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. 11.5 is the Beechworth Pool feasibility study. The recommendation is that council receives the Beechworth Pool feasibility study. 2, acknowledges that on the basis of the significant cost and investment involved and notwithstanding the strong support for a new facility by the Beechworth community, any proposal to replace the existing Beechworth Pool is currently not feasible. 3, the council prioritises advocacy to the state and federal governments to address the issue of replacement or upgrades of aquatic facilities and the establishment of enhanced funding programs which can reduce the cost to small rural shires when faced with aquatic facility replacements or upgrades. 4, that council seeks funding from the state and federal government and any other agent to support option 2 stage 1 development, $10 million at the existing Beechworth Pool site. And 5, allocates funding in the 2022-2023 budget to replace the existing Beechworth swimming pool liner and other capital works as a solution to ensure the pool remains operational in the short to medium period. Moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Goldsworthy.
I've had a fair bit to do with the working party for this report, and there are considerable concerns in relation to the Beechworth swimming pool. It was built back in the 70s. It hasn't lasted the journey. Back in 2007, 2008, the spine of the pool cracked and it was replaced with a liner. The estimated lifespan of that liner was for a relatively short period of around about 5 years. It's got through until it would make it about 12 or 13 now. It is failing. The concrete supports around the side of the pool give me great cause for concern. When you swim in the pool or actually walk on the bottom of it, it's almost like a trampoline effect with water under it, given the delineation of the liner from the structure of the pool. The options that are put before us aren't very palatable in relation to the cost. $10 million for anything would be one of the largest investments that council would seek to make in any asset, and $14.5 million for combining that with a heated pool is probably a bridge too far. So I support the recommendations as they are. I would like to see the staff, if this is passed, make it a priority to advocate for funding, particularly in light of the upcoming elections, both federal and later in the year state. And I only hope that by replacing the liner, it can get a little bit more life out of it, because I'm not even sure that the pool structure surrounding it is going to be good for it.
So, Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you. I want to just really focus on the fact that the cost of pools to small rural councils, where we have a number of them in our shire, we have 5, some have 6 or 4 or 7, is absolutely disproportionate to our capacity to pay for that. Obviously, in a metropolitan area, they can have these fabulous swim centres, and they have huge populations that use them, and they have a lot of revenue to help pay for them. We're not in that position. If we were looking simply at the economics of it, we would close the pools in Indigo Shire. And of course, there is no way any of us in this room would want to see that happen. So we are very aware of the importance and significance of these pools to our community. That's why we are prepared to bear the cost of them. But in saying that, I'm on the board of Rural Councils Victoria, which represents 38 rural councils, and this is a submission that's been put in on behalf of all of them to the state government to say rural councils cannot afford to continue the maintenance of pools that were built during the 54 Olympics in many cases. So they're 50 plus years old now. And the councils are not in a position, just like us, to get them to the standard we would dearly love to see. So there is advocacy going on, and obviously Indigo Shire is also advocating for our own budget to help with this. So I guess I just want to reiterate to the community that none of the pools are at the standard we would like to see. We don't have the capacity to do that within our own budget. We are absolutely committed to maintaining those pools for the good of the significance to all of our communities. But we ask you, I guess, to bear with us with the fact that we just do not have deep enough pockets to create the kind of facilities and amenities we would love to see for our communities. So they're not as good as we want them to be. We're never going to have the money to make them that way ourselves, and nor should we put all the money into one pool. There's 5 of them here, and every one of those communities values their pool. So we're going to do what we can with what we've got, but we're going to advocate for more. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Goldsworthy.
Look, I'll just pick up on the point of the worth of pools to the community. I think Sunday was a fine example where there was a pennant held at the Beechworth swimming pool. The fellow competitors came from Rutherglen, Mount Beauty, Tallangatta, and Myrtleford. Beechworth fortunately come away with winning that particular pennant, but you're talking about around about 80 young swimmers from 8 years to usually around about that 17, 18 years. We've certainly had a significant amount of swimmers go on to regional and state and win at state level. No Olympians that I'm aware of just yet, but so it is a great skill to have, being able to swim a few laps of the pool, but equally just as a meeting place and during these hot days. And we know that with climate change, we're going to get more hot days and our pools will become increasingly more valuable.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 12.1, proposed program, local roads and community infrastructure round 3. The recommendation is that council endorses the below projects for inclusion in the capital works program under the 3rd round of the local roads and community infrastructure program and allocates the $2.137 million grant amount as follows. Footpath construction, Tratton Street, Waggunya, between Blanche Street and Morley Drive, 130,000. Uncover Heritage Bluestone Crossing, Ford Street, Beechworth, 40,000. Construction of footbridge over floodway, Connor Street, Chiltern, 90,000. New curb and channel and drainage improvement works, High Street, Rutherglen, south of Reedy Street, 90,000. New curb and channel drainage and town entrance improvements, Havelock Street, Barnawatha, 80,000. Chiltern Community Hub additional funds to enable completion of the project, $1.1 million. Site works to facilitate safe public access to River Kiowa River land, Kiowa, 30,000. Stone drainage repairs and rehabilitation Beechworth 100,000. Road upgrade Bells Flat Road Yakandanda. Lane to service Basin Road 426,000. Survey and design of intersection safety improvements Cornish Town, Chiltern Rutherglen Road 50,000 for a total of $2.137 million. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Horn. Councillor Price.
I'm really pleased with the proposed program that our staff have put forward. I think that there's been some really good guidelines and some really good thinking about a mix of projects across the Shire, projects that are priorities, and also a couple of really significant amounts of money going to some of our significant projects. I think it strikes a really good balance with what's achievable for the Capital Works program. And I think that this local roads community infrastructure money has been really, really visible to the community and what we've been able to provide so far. And so I look forward to seeing round 3 completed as well.
Councillor Horn.
I'm certain that the people of Waganya will be delighted to know that they're finally getting their footpath in Stratton Street over in Waganya, and the blend of goods again, deals going to all the different towns again is very pleasing to see. It's an ongoing problem for us, and it's expensive. You know, you can't do anything cheaply. So this money is being well spent.
Councillor Goldsworthy.
I'm hoping that the majority of these projects are done on a strategic level and the urgency of them. I'd like to think that they've been able to classify these projects in a manner that does that. What I would like to point out is the combined total spend per person for rounds 1, 2 and 3 of this funding. I'll just read out a few figures for you in relation to the allocation of funds. So per person for Beechworth, $274 has been spent in the town. For Changam, Kiwa area, it's $393. For Waganya, it's $387. Yakandanda, $854 per person. Sandy Creek, $285. The Chiltern area, $1,358. So about 5 times what's being spent in that first figure from Beechworth. So there is, whilst it may be a little bit disproportionate, significant in some cases, I hope that it's been done on a strategic basis.
Did you mention Rutherglen in that?
No, Rutherglen, the paupers for the rest, 140, but they weren't the worst. Stanley was the worst at 123 per person.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I'll just see whether anyone else. Councillor Shepherd.
It's great to see Bells Flat Road is going to be continued. I've had a fair bit of concern with people saying stopping that in the middle of nowhere is just making it dangerous. So while the construction's all happening down there, it's great that we're going to be able to extend that work and finish the road really, so that it's an important road. It's now going out to all the biking, the heads of all the trails. There's a lot of people using it for all sorts of recreation, walking, riding, and it needed to be improved. And I was a bit worried. So it's great to see that it's on the list, and while they're still there, they'll get it done.
Councillor Price to sum up.
I am satisfied that these are all good strategic projects that have arrived on this program for very good reason. And I'd challenge you, Councillor Goldsworthy, that that's probably an unfair perspective, because it undermines the criteria that we use. And if we were to focus on spread across the Shire, it would constantly undermine our criteria. And for those towns that it may not be their turn, Beechworth will come with a $10 million pool. Rutherglen's will come with a myriad of other things. It's just the nature of the way that it goes. Everything's really expensive, and sometimes the focus has to go to one particular town or another. and we get round to each of them in the end.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 12.2, the recommendation is that council authorises the CEO, the financial delegation to award contract 192021 to 00103 Chiltern Community Hub construction with the total available project budget. Authorises the CEO to execute the contract documentation. And 3, authorises the CEO, the financial delegation, to approve contract variations up to a total of 10% of the signed contract value. Somebody like to move that? Moved by Councillor Price, seconder, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Price.
This feels long awaited, but I'm pleased to be at this stage. It's interesting in the background, we've got a really high functioning kinder and childcare provider. I think it's a really good time to bring the library into that space, and I think that there's lots of good community support. So let's get on and build it.
Councillor Shepherd.
Yes, I just want to point out that this tender assessment, there's been a few unique considerations. And so the lead time on construction materials, as anyone who's got anything to do with anything has noticed how hard it is to get construction materials and the escalating cost of them. And the project, it's funded under the state government, and we had lots of delays because we had a lot of issues which we wanted to feedback around the design. And of course, we had to move the SES in the meanwhile. So there were quite a few different things that ended up happening in that space. I think it's going to be a great outcome, but we've got to get on with it, because I think with each time, with more time, it's going to cost us more. And of course, it is costing us more. And I think it's been explained to us quite well why this tender has blown out, even with 3 good groups tendering for it. It still has become more expensive. So, but absolutely will be worth it to the community. They won't notice once it's built how much it cost.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Price. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 12.3, the recommendation is the council adopts the Bridges Asset Management Plan, version 2 for 2021, and 2, the Building Asset Management Plan, version 2 for 2021. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Croucher. Councillor Goldsworthy.
So the bridges and the building asset management plans form a tranche of plans. They're 2 of 5 plans that includes the roads management plan, the pathways and the stormwater drainage. I've been banging on about this one for a few years now. We originally expected to get them in March of last year, and then it went out to September, and we finally got them in December. So it's only been a couple of years since they were promised, which is about 5 years later than I would have liked. Because these go back to, as the report says, about 2011, 2012, when we first did the plans under the National Asset Management Assessment Framework. It is important to know what our assets are, where our assets are, how they're depreciating, and what we need to do to fix them. It gives us some guidance for our long-term financial plan, and also for where we spend the rates and what grants we need to go for. So these are 2 fairly solid documents that provide the staff and the broader community a bit of information about where we're at with our bridges and buildings, and we should adopt them.
Sure. Councillor Croucher.
Well, I can't add much to that, but I just see these as fairly important documents providing plans for the renewal and upgrade of our council buildings and their bridge assets.
Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Goldsworthy. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.1, the recommendation is the council adopts the new Advocacy Action Plan 2021 to 2025. Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Well, if we're going to get a new swimming pool, we have to advocate for it. Look, it's a 14-page document that really cuts to the heart of what we want to see as a council. It draws out of our council plan as to what we need to do and have the mayor and the CEO advocate for us. So it is really important. It needs to be a document that's presentable to state and federal authorities and to ministers so that we can try and get something done. So it's a good plan. At this stage, I'm happy to see.
Councillor O'Connor.
Yeah, I think just to emphasise what Councillor Goldsworthy is saying, as I just discussed with the pools, we do not have the budget to deliver the kind of services and facilities and infrastructure that our communities need and deserve. We just saw that it would take 1/3 of our entire budget to provide one swimming pool. So that's the kind of ratios that we're stuck with here. So the Advocacy Action Plan is something that is really saying very clearly to state, particularly state governments, these are the things that our community tells us they need. We've worked with them to get these lists together, and we can't possibly fund them on our own, and we need your support to do that. They all have good business cases behind them and a lot of community support. So we're advocating on behalf of our community with this, and we have had some great success from advocacy over the last few years. So I'm hoping that can continue, even as we know that the purse strings will tighten. It does. We're not just going out with our hand out. We're actually creating a solid argument about why these things are worth funding. So that puts us in good stead. And I think Mel Collis has done a great job in pulling this together into a very coherent document.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Goldsworthy. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.2. Recommendation is that council endorses the complaint handling policy and the customer service charter, places them on public exhibition until the 21st of January 2022 and invites community submissions. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Councillor Price, seconder. Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Price.
This is a really important part of every service that we provide as a council. We need to have really high levels of customer service, and we need to have a best practice complaint handling policy. We think that we've got that, so we're turning it over to you for feedback, and we look forward to receiving that feedback and considering it in the new year.
Councillor Shepherd. No. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.3, grants governance policy adoption. The recommendation is that council adopts the attached grants government policy version 1A. Councillor Croucher.
I'd like to put forward another recommendation.
A motion. Yep.
Sorry. That council adopts the attached grants governance policy 1C with the following changes and additions. On page 5 of the document.
I'll put that motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Horn.
Just going to read out the changes.
Oh, the changes. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Just on page 5, where it says each panel will include a mix of council staff, council representation, community members, and could we include the word and or external members? So it just says or, so could we include the word and? And where it's got the conflict of interest, dot point 1 says conflict of interest must be declared by all committee members and recorded in the minutes. I'd like to add another dot point just underneath that to say the nature of conflicts of interest may be disclosed confidentially to the CEO.
Would somebody like to second that motion? Councillor Horn, Councillor Croucher.
Right, Indigo Shire is indeed lucky to have 5 competitive grant programs with a total grant pool available of $145,000 designed to deliver on community needs. I believe the makeup of the grants assessment panel of non-voting councillors to chair the panel, community members, external members and council staff is the fairest way of delivering the grants program. I therefore endorse version 1C with the addition of those points that I had just mentioned.
Councillor Horn.
This matter has certainly had a very eventful passage since it first came up to the chamber back in June of 2020. We've had a really good chance to consider it, along with input received from community members from across the Shire. And I'd like to take the time to thank those people who made the effort and had the initiative to share their considerable knowledge, ideas and expertise on this somewhat emotive topic. As a proponent of participative governance, I strongly support greater community involvement in our decision-making processes. I believe that one, if not the most significant, of roles that we as councillors in the nearest level of government to the people perform is to amplify the voices, the needs and the desires of our communities to those in Spring Street and Canberra to avoid city-centric decisions. We cannot do this without the voice of the people we represent. This policy lays the foundation for the development of robust processes that are based on deliberative engagement practices that value local knowledge and the willingness of our communities to participate and contribute in more meaningful ways to our governance.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd.
This has been a contentious motion, interestingly. And I think we were very much of an opinion that we wanted to have councillors and community involved in grants. It's the community's money that we're granting back to them, and they have told us, even without us sending this out to them, that they want to be part of that process, and they have been part of this process to date. I think the concern that officers have had is that there's opportunity for influence and conflict of interest, but we haven't seen that, and we've been involved with it for a while now. We don't see that. All we see is the community's input and the councillors, especially when they don't have a vote, they just have an opportunity to chair or observe, that they are a very important part of that process, and are no less or more than the officers who are also involved. I think that all three need to have an opinion and need to give feedback around our community grants funding.
Councillor O'Connor.
I'm going to support this, but I do have a reservation. I will still vote in to support this. My reservation is not about community members being involved. I think that that's unavoidable and quite in small shires, you know, even experts' advice are community people. So that's really important. My issue is the fact that the inspectorate has advised the state, all of the local governments in Victoria, that it is not appropriate to have councillors on these committees. I actually understand why they say that, because I think there is an opportunity, and it has been shown that councillors can use their influence to get advantages for particular groups or whatever that they might be supportive of. So I understand why the inspectorate has said that. I think it's naive to assume that nowhere in Indigo Shire at any time in the future would there ever be a councillor that might not do that. I think while I have great faith in my current colleagues that they wouldn't do that, this is a policy for the future. So I am going to support it, but I guess I am also not as confident as some of you that this could never happen. I think councillors, in terms of good governance, councillors shouldn't be involved in decision-making around grants that they then actually approve at a council meeting. So the reason I am able to support this is that that's been written into this policy, that the councillors have no other involvement other than chairing the meeting. I still think councillors can have an influence even through the way they chair a meeting. Nevertheless, as I say, I'm sure that these people around the table wouldn't do that, and we've just got to trust that our colleagues into the future would also be trustworthy in that regard.
I think it's got to be made clear that councillors aren't all non-voting on those committees, and the recommendation comes back to council in open council, so it's open and transparent. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Price?
I disagree with a lot of what you've said, Councillor O'Connor. I think that for a small rural shire to be able to provide this many grant streams is really fantastic, and I'm so proud that we're able to provide them. In my time on council, I've been a part of a number of them and seen varying processes and how they occur. And by observing each of the ones that I have been a part of, being able to bring that knowledge back to council and have a discussion with councillors about the effectiveness of the processes and how we might strengthen them. I think that a grants governance policy is that next step. We've had an audit on our community grants after the REMBIAC report that demonstrated that we have really robust processes, and I think this only seeks to strengthen them. I agree with Councillor Crouch's changes to the motion, because I see councillors as a pivotal part of checks and balances within those panels. I think that it shouldn't be undersold how the checks and balances work between councillors, community members and council officers. And if councillors are deemed a risk to that process, I would say that is a similar risk to the community and to our council officers, who are generally well embedded within our communities as well. So I think that this is a really strong policy to put in place, and I think that this will just continue the discussion for councillors. We'll be continuing to try and strengthen all of our processes to make sure that our grants programs are held in really good stead, and that we can continue to provide them into the future. And I think the community should have great confidence that we're paying a lot of attention here and that we're trying to have the most robust processes that we can.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher?
There's not much more I can sum up. I've listened very, very carefully to all councillors, and I take exactly what you have said as well. But I, having been on council now this is my ninth year, and I think I've been on the grants program just about every time, and I find it very valuable to have somebody like myself. I do agree with the panel consisting of a council non-voting. I do believe that we should have community members, and where necessary, external members as well, along with our council staff. So I certainly would like to endorse the governance policy 1C with those additions that I made.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.4, the recommendation is that the council adopts the revised Audit and Risk Committee Charter. Somebody moved by Councillor Price, seconder. Councillor Shepherd, Councillor Price.
I don't have much to say on this one, except that it's been considered by the Audit and Risk Committee. It's a requirement under the Act, and it's reviewed every year, and this is it for this year.
Councillor Shepherd. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.5. The recommendation is the council receives and notes the report of the activities and performance of council's community asset committees. 2, the council thanks community asset committee volunteers in writing for their contribution to the management of council facilities. And 3, the council acknowledges the work in writing of the outgoing Chiltern Memorial Hall Community Asset Committee led by Patrick O'Connor as chair. Somebody like to move that? Moved by Councillor Croucher, seconded Councillor Horn. Councillor Croucher.
Yeah, look, I'd like to thank the Community Assets Committees for the wonderful job they have done, despite the hassles and problems with COVID during the year. These groups consist of community volunteers who give up their time to ensure that council community assets continue to serve their communities admirably. And I'd also like to acknowledge the work in writing the outgoing Chiltern Memorial Hall Community Asset Committee led by Patrick O'Connor as the chair.
Councillor Horn? Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher?
I think I've said what I wanted to say.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.6, the recommendation is in the exercise of the powers referred to in section 1474 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, Indigo Shire resolves that the officer named in the instrument be appointed and authorised as set out in the instrument. The instrument of appointment comes into force immediately upon resolution of council. 3, the instrument remains in force while the officer remains employed by council or until council determines to vary or revoke it. Someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Shepherd, seconded by Councillor Price. Councillor Shepherd.
So welcome to Jared Ott, who commenced his role as team leader enforcement services on the 6th of December 2021. So very new, which is lucky that we're now approving his statutory requirements and he can get on with his job now that we've approved them. So welcome.
Councillor Price. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.7, advisory committee minutes. Recommendation is that council receives the attached unconfirmed advisory committee minutes. Notes the following recommendation from the Indigo Community Access Committee. ICAC to provide feedback to relevant council officers on access reviews and improvements at Church and High Street, Rutherglen. And 3, notes and endorses the officer comments for the recommendation listed below. Would somebody like to move that? Moved by Councillor Price, seconder, Councillor Croucher. Councillor Price.
Just to note that particular recommendation from the Access Committee, it's an intersection well known to council staff for varying reasons. And I'm pleased that the Access Committee is held in high regard to be able to provide that feedback. That's a reputation they've developed over the years, so that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Croucher. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. 13.8, informal meetings of council records. Recommendation is that council accepts the attached informal meetings of council records. Moved by Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Price, Councillor O'Connor. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. (13.8) The recommendation is the council accepts the attached informal meetings of council records. Moved by Councillor Price, seconded by. Oh, 13.9. For information, the CEO has not awarded any contracts between 250 and 500. Notice of motion nil. The Mayor's diary under 15.1. Any questions? No questions. Decisions register for information. Item number 18.1 is confidential business. Would somebody move that the council meeting be closed to the public in accordance with section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020? The following item in confidential information for the purpose of the Local Government Act 2020 for the reasons outlined in the agenda. Would all members of the gallery please vacate? Could we have a motion that we move into confidential? Moved by Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. I'd just like to mention that it's 9 minutes past 8. We're back in. We're now doing general business. Councillor Shepherd.
Yes, I should have brought it up in community achievements, really, that I went on Monday morning and was part of the opening of the Indigo Shire Youth Climate Action Group, who have got about 30 young people from around the region, and they're working them through a process of engaging them around climate action, what their concerns are. And tomorrow it will finish with a community forum at 12:45, which you have to register for, but I think they'd love everyone to come, where they give us feedback on what they've thought, what they've decided, what their actions might be. So I just want to say congratulations. That group's only been going for a year, and and it's been COVID, and they've, with the assistance of our officers, but also with DELP and quite a few other councils, they have been able to bring this together. So congratulations to the young leaders of our community. They're Indigo Shire leaders too.
Just a question for the CEO. Could you inform us what the situation is with the truck deviation at Main Street, Rutherglen, where that's up to with Regional Roads Victoria?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So they have been, Regional Roads Victoria have been out consulting on exploring 3 different options for the alternate truck route. So the previous one's been the Reed Scott Douglas combination, the Upriver Road, and the amendments to Main Street itself. So they're closing in on a preferred option, and we're waiting for them to come to council with their recommendation, and at some future council meeting, council will get to receive their final recommendation and consider an in-principle agreement to that recommendation. So we're still waiting for them to deliver that to us.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything for general business? Councillor Price.
I just want to ask of the CEO, there's a drop-in session held by Golden Murray Water tomorrow for the Sunday Creek project. I think it's 10 till 2 at, I'm not sure the location in Rutherglen, the VIC. And I just wanted to ask the CEO that we could ask a number of questions to Golden Murray Water and provide the answers publicly. We might have other questions, but the main question I have at the moment is that there's discussion in the community update they've provided about maintaining the level of Lake Moodamere for recreation. And I'd like to know what that level is and what it is in relation to how the water is at the present time. So if we could get a level, as they do with with the Hume Weir, they provide a 98% figure or something like that. If we could get something similar to understand the impact on recreation for Lake Moodamere.
Do you have some general business? Councillor Horn.
I'd like to ask another question tomorrow, please, regarding the welfare of the platypus colony that's in Sunday Creek. I think it's of great concern to the whole community.
Do we have any other general business? I now declare this meeting closed. No, sorry, Councillor Shepherd.
I just wanted to say this is our last meeting for 2021. I've forgotten that, and to say Merry Christmas to everybody and to all the listeners. Yeah, both of them. And it's been a tough year, really, hasn't it? And so I just hope everybody's out there going to have a great holiday, and well done us.
Thank you for your kind words to yourself and us. I now declare the meeting closed.